Hi, I'm Any New Province, and is this possibly Pauper playable? It's probably more playable than most of the creations I've tried on this series because, well, I didn't make this deck. I heard about it on this week's episode of Color Commentary, which is a great podcast, and I'll link it down below. I heard about it on this week's episode of Color Commentary, and I couldn't wait to try it out. So why don't you come along with me, and we'll have a look at the deck and try to see what it's doing. Okay, so I know what you must be thinking. This is green, white, and Pauper, so it's got to be a Slivers deck or something like that. It's not Slivers. Don't panic. Don't dislike and unsubscribe and close the window and never come back. It isn't Slivers, I promise. It's actually like a green, white, Exalted Persist type deck, and it took the player Cosmic Charles to a 5-0 finish in a Pauper League recently. Now, the vibe I'm getting from this deck is that it wants to be the beatdown. It wants to be fast. It wants to beat your opponent in the face. It wants to get down Acrozon Squires and Quasali Pride Mages for their Exalt ability. What Exalt does is if you only attack with one creature, it gets +1/+1 for each Exalt creature on the battlefield. It becomes exalted and huge. It also goes a little bit longer with Benevolent Bodyguard to protect your creatures from removal, or even to just sneak them through if your opponent gums up the ground a lot. Of course, this deck is playing one of the best white threats, Korskaya Fisher. Korskaya Fisher is going to enter the battlefield, pick up a permanent for you to play for value later, and then just beat your opponent in the face in the sky. It's not immediately apparent why this card is played for bounce value in this deck yet, but I think the proof is in the Pegasuses. In the Pegasi. The proof is in the Pegasi. We're also playing Sungrace Pegasus. It's just another cheap, evasive white creature that's going to gain us some life while it flies over our opponent's board. I think this must be used for some advantage against Stompy or Burn matchups so that we can survive long enough to start attacking for lethal with our other creatures every turn. So this next part of the deck is probably where we're getting a lot of that bounce value out of Korskaya Fisher. We have Renclaw Trow and we have Safehold Elite. These are two persist creatures that can come back in with a -1/-1 counter if they die and don't already have a -1/-1 counter on them. So what Korskaya Fisher can do is it can enter the battlefield and pick up one of these creatures and then replay it. We kind of get a brand new creature with no -1/-1 counters. They can even die again and come back again, as I explained earlier. So I think that's the majority of the bounce value we're getting is through these creatures, and I'm interested to see how that'll play out with the Skyfisher strategy. In terms of just other spells, we got some pretty cool stuff. We have Journey to Nowheres, which is your standard removal spell for a white deck. You're just trying to play this on your opponent's big threats, try to get as much value out of it as possible. And then we're playing Rancors to make our smaller or evasive creatures a lot bigger so those exalted triggers truly count. And the spiciest of all is Travel Preparation. This can reset our persist creatures, and it can also just make our Pegasi or Skyfishers really big before they get exalted and kill our opponent. And you can flash it back for even more value later on. So our interaction package is really interesting, and again, I'm really excited to see how these strategies play out with Persist and Skyfishers and all those kind of things. I think it's going to be really cool. All right, let's check out the mana base. We have 4 Ash Barrens. A lot of people are playing these over Evolving Wilds lately, and as always, I prefer playing them as well. It's really great if we want to play one of our 2-drop white creatures early on. I think it's just doing a better job than Evolving Wilds in this deck. We also have 4 Blossoming Sands. Your standard Pauper duels are going to gain some life and come in tapped. We have 6 forests and 6 plains and 1 Kybera Crossroads, which is pretty cool. It's sort of like a Radiant Fountain, but it's going to gain us a little bit less life and also provide another white source for all the white cards that we're trying to play. I think it has something to do with Quasali Pride Mages. I think that's why it's getting played over a Radiant Fountain, because you want both of these colors early on. So even having 1 extra colorless land in the deck might make that a little bit harder. All right, let's check out this sideboard. We have 2 Sunlances, which I think is this deck's answer to decks that are going a little bit faster. They're a little bit lower to the ground. It's kind of white's answer to those creatures by being able to deal 3 damage to them. We have 2 Standard Bearer to shut down those Boggles decks. Sometimes it gets you an extra turn against Burn. If we're running into something like Stompy, it can be good too. We have 2 Prismatic Strands. This is kind of an odd choice, kind of like Sunlance. I don't really know when we'll be fogging or what we'll be fogging. Maybe this is for some kind of is it Blitz type of deck or something like that, or Affinity. Maybe this is our answer to Atog Fling. We also have 3 Aerial Volleys. I'm pretty sure this is to knock down those pesky Aberrant Aberrations, or whatever they're called, the Flip Delvers, the other side of Delver. We have 2 Thrill of the Hunt. I think this is just protection for our creatures. It gets a lot of them around Disfigure and things like that, and I could even see it being somewhat of a decent trick. We have 2 Relic of Progenituses. That's to shut down those Delve decks early. We're not using a lot of graveyard interaction, so we don't mind exiling both graveyards. And we have 2 Core Sanctifiers, which is pretty cool, and I think just another option against maybe Affinity. It'll blow their stuff up, or Monarch, it'll blow their stuff up, and it can even be another beater if we just got to get super low to the ground. So that's the deck. Make sure you tune in on Tuesdays to possibly Pauper Playable at twitch.tv/anynewprovince. We're going to be taking this deck into a league there this week, and hopefully we'll get some flashbacks to you guys after that. So like and subscribe below. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the deck. I know Cosmic Charles did a great job with it, and I hope I do a great job with it as well, and I can't wait to play it. Thanks again, and see you on Tuesday.